I certainly say, Madam Speaker, and I think Oregonians will agree with me.
Political bodies exist to secure responsible government and to execute the will of the...
I'm Daniel Bonham. I'm the Senate Republican leader and one of the hosts that you've seen on Oregon D.O.G.E. Tonight, we had a bunch of our Republican colleagues just stop by and introduce themselves. We thought we would give you a brief insight into who they are and just a few questions to get to know members of the team. Some discussions went different directions, but we'll let you see for yourselves. Capturing content. So, who are you? Who are you? What brings you here? You're in the U.S. Senate. Welcome back from D.C. Is that how many of those emails have you gotten so far?
Yeah, you get a few of those, but you just send them off to the right people and let them handle it. Mm-hmm.
So Senator D. Linthicum now means Diane.
That's right. Yes. So Dennis and I switched places. He's in the outer office. I'm in the inner, and I do let him come in though and use his prior office once in a while just to feel good about it.
I actually saw something the other day that shocked me. Dennis was in the Senate Republican office farting around. I mean, he was doing business. He was talking about policy, but he was engaged in a conversation, and you, the member, came and tracked down your staff and said, "Hey, you've got a radio gig, bub. Get back and get on the phone."
That's right. Yes.
Unprecedented.
Yes, we're still doing that. Yeah. You know, you can't undo 8 years of staffing. And so he was ready for the radio show and he wasn't there, which is typical. So I had to go find him.
So where's home?
Home is in Klamath County on a couple hundred acres of ranch land. And we lease that out to a neighbor since we're never there anymore. But we love it. We call it home, and it's a beautiful area. It's kind of rated as high desert. Doesn't get a lot of rain, but we get a decent amount of snow. Yeah. As everyone in the legislature will know, because I was out of the legislature for a couple of weeks due to snowstorms that hit Southern Oregon dramatically this year.
Excused absences.
Excused. So far.
So far. I just want to make sure that everyone knows those were excused.
That's right. You never know.
So how long were you staff?
8 years for Dennis's 2 terms.
So how did that prepare you for this work?
It's great preparation. Yeah. I mean, I think in particular on the campaign trail, you felt it just because I knew how it works. I know how the process. When you're in the building, I already know the players. I know the lobbyists. I know who I can trust, who are the friendlies, those that I have to be a little more wary of. So, I know my way around. It's nice. It's actually good. It's been a good transition and fairly easy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Except for the IT guys who are struggling to have our office communicate properly.
So who's struggling more with the transition, you or Dennis?
Neither one of us, honestly.
Smooth?
45 years. We transition, we move around, we travel together, we work together. And we've been doing that for 45 years, honestly. So this is no different. We go with the punches.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And Todd Nash, with a district the size of Massachusetts.
Yes, it's huge.
And where's home?
Home is Wallowa County, Oregon. Yeah. I guess I didn't need to say Oregon, but
so how far away are you?
It's about a 7-hour drive. Yeah, if you look up MapQuest, it'll show that it's 6 hours, but by the time you get through 205, you stop for a snack, it's 7 hours.
Dan Mason's calling. Sorry, Dan, we're recording. So 7-hour drive, what are you doing on those car rides? Are you listening to podcasts? Are you catching up on the news? Are you making phone calls to constituents? What?
Yeah, a lot of phone calls. Sometimes I just call friends. Sometimes I just turn the radio on so I can disconnect for a little while. I listen to books on tape. There's a lot of things you can catch up on.
Any good one lately?
Gosh, I kind of got hooked on the series that has to do with LBJ, and it's really an interesting, fascinating history, and not a president that I ever aspired to learn a lot about, but Robert Caro that wrote the books on that just did a fantastic job of all the inner workings of what took place during not only his administration, but the history of his family leading up to everything that took place, going back generations before he was born. It's a fascinating series of books.
Awesome.
Yep.
So you transitioned from county commissioner to state senator. What about for you? How's the transition been?
Well, this is busier than I've ever been before. As a county commissioner, you worked at a much slower pace. You found areas of expertise and you focused in on those. You still had to do the diligence of what the county's jobs were, but there were areas where the Association of Oregon Counties would drive you into, and you could be expert for areas of all 36 counties. And so, but like I said, the pace was much slower. The focus on individual items was a lot fewer.
Yeah.
Having so many bills to work with, that transition has been difficult for me. And I've enjoyed it. It's been really challenging, but yeah, that's been the most difficult transition for me.
What about your family? How are they adjusting to having you come and go?
Well, my grandkids, they miss me, which is wonderful. And my wife has been doing a great job. We have a few cows that take care of at home, and we're able to hire somebody to help her out a little bit. Been doing well. I've made it home nearly every weekend and try to get things staged and rearranged for the next week. So it's been going okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was thinking about technology today. I fell in love with a woman from Mississippi and had to date from 2,000 miles away, and FaceTime was key. She didn't want to just hear my voice. She wanted to see my face and see how things were going. And we dated, through the short session. And so, busy schedule and trying to find time. And have you embraced technology and trying to communicate back home?
Yeah. In fact, my youngest granddaughter, she calls me almost every night. And a lot of times she'll try to FaceTime. But I would do some of that, certainly. But just a phone call to check in, see how things are going is mainly what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you remember the building before it was under construction.
Yes.
What do you miss most about the current state of kind of flux that the building's in, under construction, limited access?
All those things, yeah. And of course, the beauty, just the basic beauty of the structure and the kind of the historic aspects of, just the building as it is, the Galleria, the steps from the Senate and from the House, and we would take our pictures there at the beginning of every session. So there's it's definitely missing all of that grandeur, I guess. Yeah. And kind of beauty that is also really special for folks who visit, and so they're missing out a ton on that. So I can't imagine every time we drive into the Capitol, and there's so much work still going on. But I think the date is the 20. I think it's fall 2025. I can't imagine, but. Lord willing, I hope they get it done, because I look forward to, rediscovering the Capitol and allowing folks to go through and enjoy it as much as we have in the past.
So what's your favorite part of now being a member?
I think it's always been the people. I think that's what has brought us back, Dennis and I, over the years, and encouraged me to run this time was the people. Not only in our district, but when you're in the building. And I tell people in the district, because sometimes in my district it's very conservative, and the folks are like, oh, how do you stand it there? The Democrats are in control. Yeah. And I said, but there's some really good people. Yeah. Not only the Republican caucus, but there are some really good, and my district also will get a little angsty over about the lobbyists because they only hear about the bad lobbyists.
Right,
And I say,
right.
no, there's some good lobbyists
Yeah.
that do really good work, help us out a lot. And so I think it's those relationships that I've built over the last 8 years that continue on and mean a lot to me.
Well, I love you guys so much. You guys are so grounded in your faith, and you bring such wonderful perspective to this job. So when this first came up, this idea of walking out and then where we were going to go from there, and when D. Linthicum was going to replace D. Linthicum, it just warmed my heart. And so I'm so glad that you are both making it work and making it happen.
Yeah.
And it's fun to see you both in the building still.
It is. It's fun to be there together and continuing the work. Yeah,
we need to get you to get ready to, use that voice on the floor if we need to kill some time. Dennis was famous for being able to carry on a speech probably better than anybody, and always able to keep it, germane.
Yes.
On topic.
Yes. He does have a gift, an oratory gift that he's a natural teacher. And so he always wants to tell people how it is and what they should think. And let me tell you this too. And I don't have that propensity.
No.
I'm more like,
You've got a gift to speak.
You should figure
though.
it out. I've figured it out. Now you should too. So, but I can get there.
Trust me, we've seen glimpses of it. I know it's coming.
Yeah.
Todd, what about you? What's your favorite part about being a state senator?
Well, it's a huge honor to do this to begin with. Nothing I ever thought I would do. If you would have went back 10 years ago before I was a commissioner, I think all of you guys would be surprised at the person that's here today. My favorite part about it, getting to represent people.
Yeah.
I wish I was more fluid in my speaking. I wish I had a gift for oratory that would just stun everybody. But there's people that I represent that don't ever speak in public. And so to get up there and represent them, present some of the bills that I get to do, to see some of them be successful, and be able to go back home and say, I did this for you. That's the best part.
Well, I think, part of the reason why we're doing these podcasts and why I started the podcast that I run, I do Main Street Politics, and this is what I do. I just bring people on, and I normally talk to people, how did you find the building? Who should do this work? What in your past, was there ever a moment you knew you wanted to do this work? But Todd, the one thing that you have in spades is authenticity. And I think that's what today's consumer of a podcast, of somebody that is looking for a political elected official to represent them is looking for. They want a real person that speaks truly and plainly and is relatable. And you have that in spades, and you're doing a tremendous job. It's so fun to have you both in the caucus, and I'm eager to find out what's next for both of you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having us on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm just saying. Noah, you should be fine because you're just going to face us the whole time. Noah Robinson, welcome.
Thank you.
Where's home?
Cave Junction, Oregon, down near Grants Pass.
How long's that round trip?
About 4 hours one way.
4 hours one way. And are you living in a single bedroom apartment down there, or what kind of property you got?
In Cave Junction? Yeah. We've lived on a farm there for 45 years.
No, I know. I just was talking to Diane Linthicum and Todd Nash, and they're talking about their hundreds of acres of land. I thought maybe you'd want to compete too. You got some land?
We live on a farm there. We have mostly forest land we own around there, but it's nice because it's a little bit secluded, backed up against the government land, except that the wildfires come over because they don't manage their land properly. So we have a little problem there.
This is true. Look at this guy spitting political facts while he's introducing himself. I love it. He's on message. So you were in the building working with your dad, Art Robinson, who was a state senator. Yep. And then Art chose to walk out with a few of us and was unable to run again. At what point did you think, it's my turn, I'm going to step up and do this?
Well, it was about the point that I guess Diane Linthicum and Dennis Linthicum switched. my dad had the theory that he would file and see what happens.
Yeah.
And we hadn't really talked too much about what happened. We talked about it a little bit, and we were figuring one of the family would have to run instead because we weren't going to let them get away with this. And after he was rejected, they rejected Dennis, they rejected everybody, they rejected my dad. We looked at it and decided, well, I better file just so that it's clear to everybody what's going on. So I tried to convince my brother, and he said, no, you have to do it. So I was stuck with it.
Was there ever a time that you wanted, like growing up, were you in student council or anything? Did you do leadership, anything that you thought someday I'm going to run for office? Because your dad always had political ambitions.
Yeah, I was delighted. I helped him a lot when he ran for Congress. I was his campaign manager the whole time.
Yeah.
And I liked working with him. I don't think my dad was even, my dad was not, would never have thought he was going to wind up in that office either.
Okay.
But he did. And I never planned to. I liked working with my dad. I wanted him to run again. It's different being the senator rather than helping out. But I would have preferred that he were here again.
So quantify that. What do you think the biggest difference is?
Well, the difference is you are running everything in the office. You are making all the decisions entirely yourself or, a staff. So no, it's different that way. I have a theory that my biggest goal is I think that the political decisions should not be political. I think they should be based on truth, based on facts, based on science when it applies, and it applies to many, many of the things we discussed there. And I think that that's what's important. So I look at every legislation from that perspective. I do remonstrances on subjects that I think are very relevant. Various things. I've discussed a lot the global warming issue.
Yeah.
The science of that is definitely not on the side of CO2 causing a problem. It just isn't. And on many other things. So I'm interested in facts. It's my scientific background. And I think everyone else should be too.
Yeah, you're a scientist.
I'm a scientist. I PhD in chemistry in Caltech. And I don't understand how you can make a solid argument and there's really no refuting it. And they say, okay, we're going to vote the other way.
So one of my favorite things is your dad gave a remonstrance every day. Every day that he was on the Senate floor, he stood up and he said something. You get 2 minutes to give a remonstrance, and you have continued that tradition. Have you missed one yet?
I have not missed one yet, no.
Do you plan to?
I'm not planning to.
Going to have something to say for at least 2 minutes every day.
That's right. And it's funny. There's a lot of things that, before session, you're thinking, I'd like to tell them about this, and I'd like to tell them about that on various scientific subjects. But there's every day. And now we're up to 4 days a week. But if you watch the legislature for a while and all the subjects that go by, the material is just endless.
Yeah.
There's plenty to talk about. And we haven't even gotten into very many political things. I can write remonstrances for the next year. It's that bad.
So one of the smartest things you have done since you've been in office, from an outsider's perspective looking in, is you hired fantastic staff.
I'm very fortunate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where did you find these wonderful people?
Well, it's funny because I worried about who I would have. And after I won the primary, it was pretty much assumed I would win the general, and I was looking around. And they all just came out of the woodwork one way or another. I called from, I know someone that would be interested. They're all relatives of people that I've known for a long time, and I think they've turned out wonderfully. They have no experience with politics, and I think that's better because they look at it from a rational perspective. There's no political filter.
And we were just talking to Todd Nash a second ago, and I paid him the compliment. He's very authentic, right? What you see is what you get with Todd, and he's just relatable. He's the real deal, and I feel like that's what your staff brings too. Like they bring everyday perspective to the Capitol, and they're just friendly, they're kind, they're fantastic.
Yes, I'm very fortunate to have them. We make a great team. We work together, and we really enjoy it.
So, Brock Smith, you came in from the House.
Indeed.
Appointed to the Senate.
In 23. Yep.
In 23.
I was actually sworn in, won my reelection, came into the House in 17, won my reelection in 22, then was sworn into the House, and then sworn into the Senate.
When 2016, November 16, you won your first election?
2016.
So sworn into the House in 17, stayed in 17, had won the 22 election, sworn into the House in 23, and then moved over to the Senate weeks later?
Actually, January 18th, if I remember right, it was actually opening day of the Senate.
So in the Ways and Means Committee, you get seated based on seniority on the committee, not necessarily in the building, but on the committee. So DBS, with his one extra day on Ways and Means from his time in the House, gets to sit closer to the chair than I do. Not that I'm bitter about it.
I didn't realize
because
that.
I have been in the Senate longer, but he has been on Ways and Means longer by a day.
Because I was actually appointed to Ways and Means in the House and had to give it up to come to the Senate. I didn't realize that. I wondered why I was on your left.
Yeah, so Dick Anderson wondered why Mike McLane was on his left. Oh my gosh, I thought we were going to have an internal feud, and it's worked out. It's worked out. Everybody's fine.
I'm just glad that Mike doesn't have to sit at the kids' table.
He was very concerned.
He
about
was.
That. Sorry, Anthony Broadman. No disrespect meant by the table that is down below. But anyway, so what's the difference? House, Senate? Any difference? Or is it the same game? Different chamber? Is it?
Oh no, it's night and day. I think you would think the same. It is. I mean, we have 12 Republicans in the Senate caucus versus currently 24 Republicans in the House caucus.
So just the sheer numbers.
Well, not just the numbers, but you are, of course, you've been my colleague since 17 in the House, but our Senate Republican leader, you're doing a fantastic job. And you keep us all informed. You want our input. You're constantly, checking in, seeing where we're at.
Differences, House and Senate. I appreciate the kindness.
No, I mean it is. It's just a completely different animal. It's different Democrats across the aisle that have had more time in the building and have create relationships. Not just in your own caucus, but across the aisle. I mean, I'm often in the House, and everybody's like, "What are you doing over here?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm going back to my roots." And then, but really, what I remind everyone is that you still got to count to 31, right? You got to count to 16 in the Senate, but you still got to count to 31 in the House. So it's good to make sure that you create and continue those relationships.
So Dwayne Stark used to tell us in the House that we needed to have a sugar mama or a sugar daddy in the Senate. So what do you call your counterpart in the House that you got to go help count to 31?
I don't have one of those yet. I haven't cultivated that sugar mama, sugar daddy type thing.
Okay.
But I used to have a few in the Senate. That's what. So they're gone. And now. Now you just cultivate your own relationships. But, I've been working in the building since 2013 when I was a county commissioner and involved in the Association of Oregon Counties and the legislative committee there and natural resources and stuff. So I've been working and trying to cultivate those really, and there's still some legislators that have been here. I mean, it's hard to think that, when I won re-election in 2022, and was going into my legislative term in the House. Of course, Representative Greg Smith was the longest, in the Republican caucus.
Yeah.
And then Representative Werner Reschke and I were tied for second seniority. I mean,
which is nuts how fast that happened.
It is, so you're looking 17 to 23. That is the changeover that has occurred.
I was thinking in 18, I replaced Huffman, who had resigned. Helfrich came in to replace Johnson that resigned. Then Newt Bueller left to run for governor. Sal Esquivel retired.
Yep.
Gene Wisnett retired.
Yep.
Andy Olson retired.
Yep.
Bill Kennemer retired.
Went to the Senate. Yeah.
Or no, he went to this. No, he retired first and then got appointed to the Senate.
That's right. Yep.
Dallas left. Came to the Senate. Significant turnover in that House Republican caucus. Where's home?
Home is the beautiful Southern Oregon coast, Port Orford, the oldest town site on the Oregon coast, farthest westernly incorporated city in the contiguous United States. It's a beautiful small town of 1,000 people, and I third generation Southwest Oregon. It's fantastic. My my mother still lives there, and where I was raised up the Elk River, and I love home.
Have you ever talked about that before?
Maybe a few times. And when you're the 8-year president and chamber director of your local chamber, you kind of have those little
Finish the
snippets.
sentence. It's always better
On the beach. Always better at the beach, everyone knows. That's why everyone loves to go to the beach. But we have a kind of a unique struggles. I mean, every community is different. But, if you look at the central and north coast, even South Coast and Curry County, we double or triple in size during the summer when everyone's trying to avoid the valley heat and wants to go to the beach. But that adds to its own issues with regards to public safety and fire and so forth. So
I'm going to throw something at you. Forgive me in advance. You lost your dad.
Yeah.
Right at the beginning of session.
December 5th.
Yeah. And so you come in, you've always had, like I noticed when you talked about back home, that mom was still there.
Yep.
And so how has that been dealing with the overwhelming emotions of being a human being and suffering a loss and trying to engage in this work?
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's still emotional, but my father was a man of faith. I'm a man of faith, and he's always with me.
Yeah.
His ashes are on my desk. It's hard, but it is. It's why I'm so passionate and driven. I mean, my father was an incredible man. 3 master's degrees, retired Lieutenant Commander Mustang, which means he got a presidential commission to become an officer, was a San Diego, Reserve San Diego PD officer as well. And he was just he was an incredible man. I hope to be a tenth of the man that he was.
And he was proud of you.
Yeah. So it's hard, but I'm glad that I have this work to keep me busy. And we had the memorial for him, and it was a beautiful thing, and lots of people came out to celebrate his life and his work, and so he is always with me and always driving me into the things that we need to do what's best for the people that I represent in Southwest Oregon and Oregon in general.
So I appreciate the love and the admiration you have for your dad, and I love hearing about it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Love you, brother.
Love you too. So I do want to give a shout out.
Yeah. Hold on. David, are you going to start a podcast?
We are starting a podcast, and I want to thank you, and I want to thank my dear friend and former mentor,
Senator
McLane, who helped shepherd me through my beginning years in the Oregon State Legislature, and was a guiding light and a beacon of hope.
Great American.
And just a great American. But we are going to be starting a podcast, and we're going to entitle it No BS with DBS. And we're going to be talking about the issues that are important to you, not just in my district, but around the state. We're going to be holding Democrats accountable for the bad decisions they're making that are going to impact the people. We're going to be exposing some of the wasteful spending, some of the just idiotic decisions that you will not believe that are occurring. And I look forward to those conversations and appreciate the opportunity and appreciate the little nudge to get moving forward.
I'm sure we'll hear about bills of concern.
Oh my goodness, we got lots of bills of concern. The good thing about the bills of concern, though, that we today is the chamber deadline, and so
Cut those bills in half.
that's right. There's going to be a lot of Democrats weeping tonight when they woke up this morning in the supermajority thinking they own the world, and they going to sleep tonight still in the supermajority, but their bills died, and celebrate with a toast later on that. But we
The interesting thing about being a Republican is it just happens sooner for us.
it does. It most certainly does. When we present a bill, we expect it not to move forward. I mean, that is the expectation that I give myself, so that I don't have false hope, because everyone knows that that's just painful. And so we have so when we do keep something alive, it's gleeful, really. I mean, it is so exciting to know that there's still this little idea that you have put forth, that you've nurtured, and that you have advocated for. You brought in your people to advocate for, that you have convinced at least three or one, excuse me, if you're in a committee of 5, one of your Democratic colleagues to say, you know what, this idea, this is going to change Oregon for the better, and I'm going to support that. Now, of course, it has financial obligations to it. It's sitting down there in the abyss of Ways and Means, waiting to be churned out. And so, budgets are priorities. So you got to continue those efforts to make sure that you can get those resources put to that task.
David Brocksmith, because nobody wanted to vote for David Smith.
Hey, well, when you're running for county commissioner, and you're the first county commissioner to be elected in North County in over nearly 40 years, because all the population is in South County and Brookings Harbor, and by goodness, there's a David Smith always in the arrest logs. You probably want to throw your middle name in there, just so you can say, David, he was just arrested for stealing a car. Why? He's running for county commissioner? What the? Yeah. So
Noah, you got a podcast coming out?
A podcast
Yeah,
coming
are you going to be hosting anything that the people need to know about?
Well, I haven't been doing anything independently that way, except for I've been doing remonstrances, and we have been sending out clips of those.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, we could host Conservative Corner with Noah Robinson. I think that's got some.
Love that idea.
I'm happy to show up and talk about anything.
I know at least 2 people that are hankering for Conservative Corner. All right, Noah Robinson, David Brocksmith, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
But everyone knows it's ballooned.
So Mike McLane, Senate District 30, where's home?
Powell Butte, Oregon, and I live, which is between Redmond and Prineville, kind of Bend area, and it's in that area in between. And I've lived there for, 22, 23 years. Moved over there with my kids and my wife, and raised the kids there, 3 kids, and grew up in Condon, Oregon, which is north central Oregon, but it's in Gillum County. So this is in Crick County, but that's home. That's where we are putting in a pickleball court.
In Condon?
No, in Powell Butte.
Okay.
My wife is
At the
really
house?
into
At the
pickleball.
house?
At the house, and it just is the asphalt or whatever got laid yesterday, and they're doing that. So I'm
This
about
is
to
exciting.
be. Yeah, no, my wife is really into pickleball, and she looked at me, and when I look in the mirror, I see a young dude just felt ready to go,
Six-pack.
right? And she was like, "You need to probably move more." And
So being an attorney and being a state senator have not kept you in
there's
shape.
more of me to love now than there was prior to going into session, but it'll come off. And you ever see the Michael Myers character, middle-aged man on SNL?
Yes. Yes.
I'm feeling like that guy right now. But we have a place out there, raised the kids, 4-H animals, did the whole thing, and loved it. Loved living in Powell Butte, and soon we will host the Powell Butte Invitational pickleball.
Wow.
So I know Shelley Bossart Davis and her husband Jeff Davis put a pickleball court down in Albany in their barn. So we may have to sign up for some time down there.
I may challenge Shelley and Jeff to a little bit of who's the champion. Now Shelley's got that height. You know, she's my wife though. Played tennis at Newburgh High School, Newburgh Tigers,
Wow.
and she's not bad at pickleball.
There's a Newberg connection I'm sensing here.
Yeah.
Well, they were in the Metro League back in the day. We were the Tigers, and they were the Newburgh Tigers. One of those sounds like it fits one of them.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much.
I met her in FFA, and she was wearing that corduroy blue jacket, and I thought, hey, I'm from Condon.
So Mike McLane, you may not even know it. You were my first ever guest on the Main Street Politics.
Was I?
Yeah. And I remember because I told you, Mike, you have to sit close to the microphone.
Close to the mic.
And you gotta eat it. And you started that way. And then you started to pontificate.
Oh.
And next thing you know, you were talking back here and we had some challenges.
We had some audio problems.
It worked out.
Yeah.
And the content was great.
Always great. Always great. Well, this time I'll do better.
You're crushing it. Bruce Starr, do you have the most legislative experience at this table right now?
He does.
There's no question. Sorry.
So I was going to ask Mike this, but I'll ask you this too, because Mike was talking about the need to, Holly wanted him to play some pickleball. When I came into the house, I put on the freshman 15. Does that happen when you come back? Does the sedentary nature and the snacking hit you, or have you been able to stay fit and trim?
I am not going to let that happen. So the nice thing is that there's no lounge on the Senate side. So if you're gonna embark on the lounge, you're gonna have to take a walk. So
I'm up to the freshman 10, but I declare tonight I draw a line. From this day forward, I'm eating right. I'm exercising. Eye on the tiger.
there you
So
go.
Bruce Starr, state senator from the Yamhill County, Polk County,
Yamhill, Polk County, District 12,
District 12. Where's home?
Dundee.
Dundee. And how long have you been in Dundee?
It'll be 5 years this July.
And you've been in the state Senate before. This is old hat.
Something
10-year
like
break in between.
Yeah.
What changed?
It's a lot more partisanship. The progressives, the Democrats have gotten way crazier, way more progressive. There's the constructive middle is way less populated. There's rules now that there weren't before. I mean, there's things that the way things used to be and the way things are today, there's a lot of changes. So,
Which do you prefer?
I prefer the way it used to be. It's a lot more autonomy, a lot more ability of senators to run how things were. A lot more bureaucracy. The fact that you have a union in the building, staff, that's crazy. Doesn't make any sense to me. So things like that.
Yeah.
The relationship between the legislators and the lobby, I think, has changed a lot. Part of that is construction of the building, but part of it is, I think, just, maybe COVID played a role in that. Not in a good way.
Oh, not in a good way at all. Yeah, COVID shut the building down.
I couldn't imagine. I obviously wasn't there during that time, but I couldn't imagine how that process worked when you can't be physically present with your colleagues.
Didn't work.
I'm sure it didn't.
Even when we were back with the masks and we could have a staff and we could, then we had people filming us because on the third floor we didn't wear masks in the house. So we had
Right.
D staff following us around, filming us and filing complaints that we were endangering their lives. And
Yeah, ridiculous.
it was nuts.
Yeah.
And we could sit up in the caucus room and we only had to come out to the floor to vote. But no constituents in the building. Zero.
So wrong.
So how do you engage with the public in a public process?
So did you vote when they weren't in the building?
No, we were in the building.
So, all right. So
Members were in the building.
Members were in the building.
and
And we could have one staff with us.
and maxed up, and you would go down to the floor and vote.
Or we would sit up in the caucus room and we would walk out onto the balcony because we could be spaced out in the caucus room. So we could just walk out on the balcony and give a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
Wow.
Oh, how awkward!
And so
terrible.
the rule of being inside the bar was thrown out. You didn't have to didn't have to run and fear being called off the floor. But there's no lobby standing outside the chamber. There's no lobby in the building. You know, you're getting emails or text messages to let you know. And then everything was Zoom, which was so dumb.
Terrible.
I mean, it sucks now, right? Like the Zoom testimony is so frustrating. And not that I don't appreciate the people from our districts that live farther away.
Right.
You know, yours is relatively close. It's not
Right.
too far-fetched. Like the Canby, Estacada side of my district, like some of the people this side of the mountain can make it down, but you know, Hood River, the Dalles, like you're not driving 2.5 hours to get
Ontario.
here. Yeah,
right.
I have
Ontario.
folks in Ontario in my district.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the closest constituents I have to Salem, I guess, would be Redmond.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have lobbyists that want to, come and have a meeting with me via Teams or Zoom. And I say, I'm sorry, if you want to talk to me, you can make an appointment and come to the office.
Yeah.
Especially if they're professional paid lobbyists. I'm just not going to do that.
I literally had that exact. So my wife is my staff.
Right.
And then Jess came to me and she said, hey, I've got this person that wants to meet with you via Zoom. And I said, I'm in the building.
They can come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're lobbying now, I still meet with folks back
Back home.
Back home.
Six
Yeah.
of District 30. If they want to meet with me by Teams, I always do.
Absolutely.
But that's distance. But
Right.
you do have some folks that are in Salem and Portland area, and they I had an agency recently want to meet with me by Zoom, an agency,
Forget it.
and I
No chance.
I said okay, but I like why but that's only happened one time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I took the meeting because I was like whatever.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with taking a Zoom meeting, but at the same time, if you're here in Salem and you can walk across the street from your building at the Department of Revenue and come talk to me, in person's always better.
It's always better.
For sure.
But I will say that the awkward thing about Teams with a lot of the committees in judiciary is my experience. It hasn't happened so much in revenue, and is the folks that are testifying and it's 2 minutes, and you have 2 minutes to testify. It's a lot easier to discern when you have someone in front of you for 2 minutes. And because the committee chair is often limited to that. And it's harder because, to really pick up subtleties, et cetera, when someone's confined to 2 minutes and they're on Zoom. It's definitely harder. And you don't always hear great. But if they're opposed or, because they sign up opposed or, support. And so, but it is a bit awkward.
The other thing that changed during COVID is who is engaged. Not just that the building was shut, but since we used to have a lot of organic grassroots people that heard about something in the news, heard it from a newsletter, and said, I'm showing up. I want to go have my voice heard. Now we get so much organized testimony.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody has paid to write talking points. It's been distributed. And so you get various and sundry people from around the state that show up, but clearly someone else wrote their testimony. The emails I get for the most part now are predominantly form emails. And so normally I'll just write back if it's not clearly stated, out of curiosity, I've received, 5 of these that are duplicate. Can you tell me who drafted this? Oh, it was the Oregon League of Conservation Voters drafted. Okay, well, at least now I know. And you gave them your email. Did you even because a lot of people say, oh, I didn't realize I sent you an email.
Right.
So I signed up on a list that if you are going to advocate on this topic, feel free to use my name and my email and send testimony. A lot of people don't even know they're testifying, which has been shocking to me. But when I first came into the legislature, I really did feel like I heard from a lot of different people, a lot of unique perspectives. And again, we get a fair amount of people that just sign into our Oregon Legislative Information System that we call OLIS.
Right.
I don't like this bill. Vote no. this bill sucks. Like
Right,
some of it is not,
Not very helpful.
super articulate
Right.
and in depth as to what the objection is, but sometimes it doesn't need to be. Sometimes you look at the bill and you say, I wonder what they were thinking. Oh, they read the bill.
And some of the bills that have been, again, my primary experience with the volume that you're talking about has been the Judiciary Committee, the Senate's busiest committee by far.
By far.
And, when you're looking at the testimony on a bill, support or oppose, and not counting the emails we receive, but when you're looking at what's on OLIS and you're seeing 100 things, right? And I just scan down the list of location till I see a town in my district.
Right.
Yeah.
And then
Exactly.
I click and read.
Yep.
Right.
And then I scan, there's another one I click and read. Because there's just no possible way to get to
Yeah, that's what I
read
do.
it all.
Same thing.
So I just read the people from my district.
Yeah, it's interesting the changes in how the public interacts with the legislature today. I mean, I started in the building a long time ago in 1987, and no email. Answering letters on behalf of the senator that I was interning for on a Selectric typewriter. You go from there to in the email world, where all of a sudden there were very few letters and a lot of emails to the today where you have, the system built into the legislative, computer network, where it's extraordinarily easy for individuals just to click and type, vote no on this bill because it sucks. And I'm in the community at a town hall and folks like, how best can we engage with you as a legislator? And I said, if you really want me to read your stuff, send me a letter, put a stamp on it, because I don't get hardly any of those.
Yeah.
And if you really want me,
any anymore.
yeah, hardly any. But if you want to make an impact in your legislator today, take a moment to handwrite a note and put a stamp on it, put it in the mail. Because I guarantee that this legislator, I can't speak for the other 89 in the building, but this legislator will read that.
Absolutely.
The other thing that almost never happens today is the phone almost never rings. And historically, I mean, it was phone calls and letters, and that's how this technologically advanced system has changed how we interact with the public.
I've noticed a change just from the time when I was in the House,
Yeah.
starting in 2011, and to the time I left. So I left in July of 2019, and then was off doing other things. Never assumed I'd be back. In just that 6-year period I was gone, I've noticed the software systems that produce emails, and what a change.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get, if a bill's up for a committee hearing or something, you can get hundreds and hundreds of emails in like an hour just on that one bill.
Yeah.
And you watch your email inbox just explode. And so, it's obviously auto-generated, some software program, et cetera. What I'll do is I'll click on one just to see what the form is, and then you can tell they're all the same. And often you can't tell, are these constituents?
Yeah, you don't know if they're constituents.
You don't know if they're
not.
constituents or not. If they're constituents, I always try to, at least my staff is trying to call them out so that at least we know who's a constituent, who's not. But so often I'll get every day hundreds of emails from people that are not constituents and I don't know what software program generates it, but you have to create some system. Thank God I have Lynn Finley's former chief of staff, my now chief of staff.
Yeah.
Right.
And she manages it, and she's figured out some way to like search in the midst of that flood and call out the ones from the district so that we can at least address that. But it's crazy.
Yeah.
So what I think is interesting is I put my cell phone on my business card. I put my cell phone on my campaign website. People have my cell phone, and some people use it pretty religiously. I get text messages, I get phone calls, but for the amount that I've given it out, I am surprised that doesn't ring more.
What's that number?
Yeah. But it's interesting, right? And then the office phone, a little bit odd for me because our front desk now captures the Senate Republican office phone. So I don't know, and my staff doesn't know when I'm getting a call from my district or when someone's just calling to complain about Republicans writ large or Democrats writ large, and they just want somebody to hear it. It's fascinating too how many people don't realize that we're not there year round.
Right.
And so we were there year round because we kept the office going, the caucus office, and the amount of people that would call in October saying, I have called, all 11 Republican offices and you're the first one to pick up. Well, people are back home. Right. We're still a citizen legislature.
Exactly.
You're still running a business.
Right on.
Right?
Yep.
And you leave on the weekends now, you're still running a business.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. Are you practicing law when you can?
Yeah, no, I'm still partner in my law firm, and I work every day. But
am I being billed right now?
I am billing. And there was a joke when I was a young lawyer at a large law firm. We used to joke, we're always billing. The question is to whom? But the thing about practicing law is you need an internet connection, a laptop, because the server is a cloud-based system, et cetera. And so you can do quite a bit. But you do, because you got to maintain a certain level. But when you're not in session, you're obviously working full time. And when you're in session, my amount of productivity, of course, goes down to where I'm working on just a few projects. But you do maintain. And I think folks, I had one guy, remember I was in my freshman term in the House, and I remember him, and it was a guy that I knew in Prineville, and he was concerned that, he said, well, you've done whatever months, so now you get your pension of $250,000 a year for life.
Right.
And I was just like, what?
Yeah.
And it's like, there's no pension, dude. And but the perception.
I came after 2013 when we said, which appropriately, to be clear, we said, if you're a legislator that's voting on PERS benefits, you shouldn't receive them. And so I have an individual directed account. That's all I have. Like I put money in there and it goes into essentially a 401k style investment. Some people had tier 1, some people had tier 2, some people are OPSER, but most of the current legislators, being that most of us have come after 2013 now, David Brucksmith, we were just talking a little bit ago about his seniority for having been here in 2017. I have seniority over like 70% of the legislature, and I'm 7 years in. Like that, we have a very young, inexperienced legislature writ large. I was listing off all the people that left when I came in, and all of them had decade plus, or at least close there too, experience. And they were replaced by a bunch of us that had zero. And so I am curious about one thing, because you both left and you both came back. Was there something that inspired this 2024 election cycle? Was there something that pulled you back in? Was there something happening at the state? Something personally that, time freed? What was it that motivated you to come back?
Bruce, I defer to you because you're the senior member.
Well, I was asked to run, and public service is important to me. When we moved from Hillsborough to Dundee, I wasn't in town very long before the mayor came and asked me if I would be willing to serve on the Dundee City Council. There was an opening, and public service is important, and I said yeah. And so, when the situation occurred where Senator Boquist couldn't run for re-election, right, and I was in the Capitol building, spring of 24 or 3 or whenever, and I was asked to consider. I was like, okay, maybe. So yeah, I was asked to run, and obviously in a different circumstance than I was when I ran, way back when, but serving is an important part of kind of who I am. It's an ethic that's part of our family heritage. And so, when asked to serve, my wife and I prayed about it and decided it was the right thing to do at the right time. So
I love that answer.
Well, I finished the terms of my parole, and I thought, I'm kidding. No, I never thought I'd be back. I was in my law firm and doing advocacy, which I enjoy, and the opportunity came up to run for the Senate, and I had, I would say, a sense of urgency about the rule of law, because I had seen a lot of influence other than the rule of law begin to dictate. You look at Portland, defund police, and so much of the efforts were, and we saw, of course, in cancel culture, and whether it was in corporate culture and the like, and I'm very concerned about that. The partisanship should never seep into discretionary application of government power, and yet it has. And so I felt a sense of urgency about that. And second of all, I knew that food insecurity is only gas hike away from a lot of folks, and my wife and I are very involved in several programs with that, and I saw it a lot in the Great Recession in rural areas, and so food security is an important issue to me and my family, and I want to make sure that those programs are protected. In what is my third issue, and that is the budget competition, it is clear that we're going to go through a change of the role government functions in our lives and this decade. And, we talk about it on the Oregon D.O.G.E podcast, a discussion on government efficiency, but it's about how the federal government is going to go through change, whether the Trump administration does that, but it has to continue through the next series of administrations as we lower our budget deficits down to manageable, but the debt continues to grow.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about our children, our grandchildren, and the amount of government they have to shoulder. And so I know Oregon's going to be affected. And so I didn't know necessarily when or what the issues were, but I felt like, I can contribute. I want to be at the table to advocate for those communities that maybe aren't so urban, and for many of them living east of the mountains, and to make sure that they're not left behind. The district that I serve, and a lot of the districts that are my neighboring east of the mountains, a lot of the infrastructure in our small towns are very old, and they don't have a tax base.
Right.
They're under a lot of requirements, DEQ and other requirements to upgrade treatment plants, et cetera. And these are hardworking folks, but there's not a population base to pay for that, and they're going to need some help. And what I saw during the Great Recession, having served on the Budget Committee, Ways and Means, when I got here as a freshman legislator, it was that there are a lot of tough decisions, and you have to advocate. And you have to advocate with every skill you have to make sure that the folks that aren't in the urban settings have a voice. And the folks that run the Budget Committee, in my experience, are pretty legit. I mean, they're trying to make good decisions. And I always enjoyed working with them, Republicans and Democrats, because they're trying to do the right thing, trying to make the right decisions, but they're not error-free. And so you have to get in there and advocate. So I have a passion for that. And I just thought, you know what? I enjoyed the process before, and I'm a good advocate, and I thought I could do some good, and I hope I can. And if I, what's the worst that happened? I thought I run, I lose, or I run, do a term, realize that it's time for someone else, and I go home and play pickleball.
Well, selfishly, we as a caucus when we had made that decision to walk out, and then we went through a court process and realized, okay, despite the fact that the plain language says,
Yeah, it was a bad decision.
it was a terrible decision, so embarrassing to the entire state of Oregon that was a 7-0 decision. But anyway, the decision was made, and then we're looking around the room going, okay, Tim's leaving. There's our leader. Lynn Finley, Brian Boquist, who you gentlemen replaced, both served on finance and revenue and transportation. Holy crap, we've got a big hole, right? So to have two members that had previously served in the legislature, understood the process, had some experience in these areas, not necessarily direct experience, but global experience in the case of like finance and revenue. Clearly you had judicial experience, which we also needed some help on. We haven't had an attorney in the caucus for a while, but then transportation, holy cow, we had a massive hole. And we were looking, who's going to come to have Diane Linthicum, having served as her husband's staff for 8 years.
She has a lot of experience.
Yep.
I mean, she, not legislative, but she knows her district. She's very good at her job.
Yep.
Yeah. And Noah Robinson had his dad was in poor health. So the last 2 years he had essentially sat at his side, walking him through the process and just making sure he got to where he was. You can't help but to absorb. Right. Sure. As your
He's a PhD in chemistry.
Yeah. No. I mean, yes,
Caltech.
He's brilliant.
Definitely the smartest person in the caucus.
I love it when we debate science on the floor and people are like, I disagree with Noah. And
I'm like,
yeah,
he's
good
a
luck
PhD
with that.
from Caltech in chemistry. I mean, we haven't had brains like that in a while.
But Todd Nash coming back as a county commissioner, or not coming back, but coming in.
Right.
Like, I feel so good with who we've been able to recruit and have come into the caucus, and I don't feel like we've really missed a beat on any given Now, granted, personalities are different. I'm not going to say we don't miss the people that have left, but it's been nice to have competent, energetic, and motivated people. I think to a T, the 5 new members came in and said, "What's happening to my state is not acceptable." And I'm going to do everything I can to try and right the ship.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, and I think a lot of us understand that Oregon voters chose to put one party in charge in a supermajority in the House and Senate, and of course, every statewide office. And so when you look at what the voters wanted, this is what they wanted. And so the best thing I know we can do is continue to advocate for our districts and try to, in a productive way, point out where their perhaps logic is flawed. Sometimes that works, and bad bills go away. And sometimes it doesn't, because there's a group in their base that wants it. And that's politics. But you can see that the frustration of folks all around the state continues to rise. And yet there's not a lot of new ideas coming out, to be frank, of the Democratic Party in Oregon as to what are the solutions. Because when you have come to power and maintain power by sort of a go-to button you push, I don't know if that button is, that was easy. You remember that?
The Staples button.
Right? Well,
it's probably trademarked.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Don't want to violate trademark law.
Cut that out.
But, it's, when the great utopia that the left has collides with financial reality.
Absolutely. Let's look at Portland.
The fact is, do you sit back and just say tough darts, or do you try to engage and lessen the impact on your district and try to build a work with, collaboration with those who actually want to get things done? And what I find is sometimes, to be frank, my Democratic colleagues really do want good solutions. And there's other times it's very clear that the base, whether it's the folks on the left from social groups or it's the public employee unions, which Let's be honest. Pay
Exert
for their
significant
campaigns,
political pressure.
right? And you know, put them in power and maintain their power. If those guys come in and say, we want this, they're going to get it, unless it's completely so obviously obnoxious that something's flawed. But we've seen it with Senate Bill 916 and other types of things, which are just, you know, shake your head at it. But Oregon is, these types of pressure points are going to increase. And you and I mean, all of us know that if the federal court system, once it gets to the appellate courts and eventually the Supreme Court, if they authorize the federal government through the executive branch to exercise discretion by the executive, translation precedent, to withhold certain grant fundings or et cetera that are not aligned with federal policy, which has precedent, right? If that's the decision, this state's in trouble.
Big trouble.
Because the policy of the state is not aligned with the executive branch at the federal government. They used to be, but they're not aligned with this administration. And what are they going to do if $1 billion here, $1 billion there is withheld?
Disappears.
Right. And then suddenly, you know, the question is going to be, are our colleagues willing to adjust course?
It's $40 billion of our state budget is federal money.
Yeah,
it's huge.
significant.
It's a huge
35% of our total funds. And, you know, we're in for a tough couple of budget cycles, let alone not even counting the federal administration, but just in the fact that the economy is robust, our demographics aren't good. More people die in Oregon than are born, and as well as net immigration, regardless of citizenship, just net immigration, the state has declined. And so we're in for some tough decisions. And right now, I haven't seen a lot of good ones coming out of the party that's in charge.
You grew up in Condon. Where did you grow up?
Hillsborough, south of Hillsborough.
So you remember going to Portland as a kid?
Rarely as a kid, yeah, but it was going to the big city for sure.
Going to the big city?
Yeah. Going to town for me was going to Hillsborough.
Dad worked downtown for me. He worked for HUD. So I would drive, or not drive, but ride on the number 12 bus. My parents had no problem putting me on a city bus and I could ride downtown and go have lunch with Dad. We would go to Portland Beaver baseball games. I've got a lot of affection for the city of Portland. And when I see what our local government has done to that city, I'm appalled.
It is terrible.
And I absolutely want Portland to thrive. And one of my newsletters, I said, don't Portland my Oregon, right? Like what they've done to Portland, they cannot do to the rest of the state, which they are. I mean, just slowly but surely. And I don't want to waste all our time here, but I trace the fall of Oregon going back to the fall of the timber industry, right? Like when you took away the
economy here,
right?
When you took away the way that we funded rural schools, rural healthcare,
1980s
rural infrastructures. Yeah.
I was in the middle of those spotted owl fights as an intern in the Oregon Senate in 1987 and 1989.
And not just on private land harvest, but the year I graduated college was 1987. And the year I got sworn in as a state representative was 2011. And between that time period, harvest on federal lands in Oregon declined 90%,
right.
9-0.
Yeah.
Just between those two markers. And so it redid our economy.
Well, Highway 97 had something like 23 sawmills up and down. There's one left,
right,
in Gilchrist. But
well, back in the rural counties were the richest counties in the state. I mean, that was just reality. That isn't obviously the case today. And when timber went away, and quite frankly, and I don't mean this in any sexist way, but when men weren't working, men started causing problems, substance abuse, domestic violence, all sorts of things. When you don't have a job and you don't feel purpose and you don't have dignity, you do stupid things. The fall of the eastern side of Bend, what was a robust, thriving community, and then
next thing you know, you've got people living in dilapidated structures, just trying to get by, kids that then are not going to school. Truancy becomes a major problem. And you look at what used to be an area where you had upward mobility. Mm-hmm. You were born into a world where you could do whatever you wanted. You're going to get a good education. Your parents were in a loving relationship, a stable home, and people from Eastern Oregon were thriving. They were coming back to run a family business. They were going out to a job that paid well, or they were going to college, and they were moving on to bigger and better things.
Right.
And it just, you think about the impact of COVID in that short term, but then you look at this just slowly boiling of the frog, so to speak, of our rural economies. We just have deteriorated them to the point and restricted them and regulated them, and the natural resources that should be able to be sustainably harvested in a reasonable, responsible way to pump money into local economies, to give people jobs. It would be a healthy way to steward our ecosystem. We can make all sorts of climate arguments. I can get Noah Robinson back in here to talk about the value of carbon.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like I think about what Portland is doing now through their taxation, whether it's, the preschool tax or the homelessness tax and the climate tax and the amount of wealth that has left Portland. People in Portland have voted with their feet.
Well, and I think about just that if you, making over 400,000 combined tax return in Portland, so you're doing okay, doing well.
Yeah.
Okay, but they put on an extra 3% income tax, so you pay a state 9.9, and then you pay in essence 30% more. And then they add on top and on top. And Portland's turned out to be, if you're making over 400,000, the second highest tax rate in the nation as far as your income. And the one that beats them is New York for folks making over 25 million. And so people get fatigued. And I've talked to many of our Democratic friends, and because they've been in charge, and said, look, I'm not going to debate the decline in timber. I'm not going to, right, all that's off the table. But would you recognize that there has been this decline, and there is, what they call the West Coast Appalachia stretching on a long strip and, encompassing much of my district? I said, so could you give us the tools to be creative, to how to retool our economy, rebuild our economy, and what some of those tools require are enterprise zones, which they said, okay, we'll let you know this, et cetera. Perhaps some relaxation, just some ability of some of the local counties to rezone EFU land into ag industrial land that has no water, hasn't been farmed for decades. Could we just do that? Could we, just give us the flexibility and creativity to control some of our own destiny. That's all we ask, is a little grace. And to my disappointment, very little grace has been given. And that's one of my highest frustrations.
Well, I think, so what's next? I don't know if you remember the article, the Oregonian put out an article, The Economist warns the Portland doom loop.
Right.
KGW ran a wonderful 27-minute segment on this. What is the doom loop? Is it something we should fear? Like, I think about what we're debating right now in the legislature. And I was out at a Lincoln Day dinner in Hood River, and we had DHM come present to us their latest poll of what people care about, top 25 list of things. And, guns was like 24 out of 25. DEI, 25 out of 25. Abortion, 23 out of 20. Like, the things that we are talking about, not necessarily abortion right now, but the things we're talking about in the legislature didn't hit the top 10.
Right.
And yet the economy and affordability, people care about this.
Part of its demographic, I must admit, is, my age, right? So I have kids in their one turned 30. and 27, 25. And, you know, when you get to my age, you think a lot about, you know, where your kids are working, how they're wanting to buy a home, get a good job, et cetera. And, you know, you really hope that your kids have an opportunity to become, you know, middle class in Oregon.
Right.
Because you don't want to be honest, I don't want to see my grandkids raised in Texas because my kids can't get great jobs here. Now, I'm fortunate in that I have a son and daughter-in-law who live in the state of Washington, and a son and daughter-in-law who live in Oregon, and a daughter who lives in Oregon. But, you know, I know a lot of people whose kids have had to leave the state for opportunity. And so it gets really personal, right?
Yeah.
So if you're suddenly realizing my kids would love to be in the Pacific Northwest, would love to be in Oregon, but they don't have those opportunities. And then suddenly those policies that the legislature has been passing, their unwillingness to allow creativity and the tools necessary to be exercised by local officials to build economies, now it gets real personal. Now it gets to the standpoint where resentment begins to build in, and you can see that people's frustration spiking.
But again, go to the doom loop, right? So the economy flattens. Thus, you don't have revenue. You don't have revenue. You don't provide the public services that people are expecting. Your quality of life goes down. What happens to the economy? It continues to
go
tank,
down.
right? And so
The ability to pay for public services goes down. The quality of the public services are diminished because the people that are paying the bill are no longer there to pay the bill, and the only ones that are there are the ones that are on the receiving end of the public benefit, and it becomes, you know, look at Detroit. I mean, it becomes a disaster zone.
Yeah, that's a great example.
It becomes a disaster zone,
dealing
and
with.
that's unless there is one. You know, one silver lining, the Multnomah County did elect a new district attorney.
Yeah.
so that is willing to enforce.
Hopefully will enforce the law. I think that they've got a public safety police chief in the city that is empowered to enforce the law.
Yeah.
So those are good things.
Yeah.
But as they continue to tax and regulate, you know, individuals with means are going to leave.
But Detroit was an interesting example too, because you were talking about earlier tonight in a meeting the amount of money we're throwing at housing.
Yeah.
How well is public housing done nationwide when
No.
government subsidize
No,
the projects?
You relax the regulations. You empower the private sector. You create an environment where investors want to invest because they get a return on that investment. And we're doing the exact opposite in Oregon. I have a son who's interested in real estate and investing in real estate, and he said, "Dad, I'm not going to live in Oregon. I'm not going to pay Oregon income tax." And so he bought a place in Washington State, and he's looking to invest in multifamily, but not in Oregon,
Right.
because it doesn't work. That doesn't pencil, and it pencils in so many other places. So we are penalizing the entrepreneurs in Oregon, the investors in our state. We are not rewarding them, and you know, guys, we live in one of the most beautiful places in all of God's green earth.
Yeah.
All the advantages that we ought to have. And we could be the Florida of the Northwest if we just had different leadership. And different leadership that recognized that by reducing the regulatory burden, the tax burden, by creating, you know, opportunities for investment, we could attract that back to the state, and we could turn the state around. It's just a matter of the voters in the state electing different leaders.
Well, I think too, having a governor at some point that says we're open for business.
Right on.
We actually, interestingly enough, throughout the carbon conversation and even talking to DEQ today with their climate protection program, the director will readily admit that the number one concern is leakage. So I come out and I regulate your Ash Grove cement plant and I put you out of business, the demand for cement and concrete does not go away. So now where are you producing the cement or concrete? Texas, China, and then you got to get it back to Oregon because we still need concrete. So you either have to put it on a ship and come clear across the Pacific Ocean, and you're producing it in an environment powered by coal, with no regulatory, no scrubbers. Like, think about what exists. I don't know if you're familiar with that operation, but they negotiated putting scrubbers on they're as clean as you could possibly want a cement plant to be, producing tons of local jobs. I don't know this for a fact, but I'm going to bet that they're sponsoring a little league team. Like, they're pumping money back into the community.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Why are we not?
And we're chasing them out of town.
Yeah, and people are going to Oklahoma. They're going to Tennessee. They're going to Florida. They're going to Texas to open businesses, and they're leaving Oregon.
Well, there's an article in the Oregonian today about the cardboard factory in Portland that's closing up shop. And I mean, that's just another example of businesses that are leaving Portland.
And the only answer I get from my liberal constituents, because I have plenty, and when they come to me, they say, I want you to grow government.
Right.
And I say, we can't afford it. And they say, grow the pot. Whatever the pie is, grow the pie. Tax billionaires. That's always the answer. We just need to tax the billionaires more, and we can pay for it all. And again, look at Portland as the example of what happens when you tax wealth to the extent that wealth can go somewhere else and not be taxed, and then tell me how well that worked.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, we're grateful as a state to have Nike in our state. We have huge investment from Intel in our state, but that's not guaranteed to always be there if you continue to have the kind of rules, regulations, tax environment that you have today. I don't think that Seattle ever thought that the Boeing headquarters would leave. So, right.
And I think that, but Oregonians continue to speak. I could be a little bit cynical and say, because the same ads run every 2 years, the same ads. We know what the ads are going to be in 2026. You're going to see in the general election. You're going to see all October and the first week of November. Same ads, right? And because they work. And so, in Oregonians say, yeah. And so at a certain point...
For the record, the governor cannot ban abortions.
Yeah, the governor, right. Trump, abortion, right.
Right.
I mean, when I saw the ads that now Congresswoman Bynum ran against Lori DeRemer, it was just horrible.
True. Yeah.
Horrible.
Yeah. Offensive,
well, they don't
to be honest with you.
No, it was Lori Chavez DeRemer and Project 2025. Yeah, I mean,
MAGA extremist.
Right. And so, you know what? It works.
They don't let the truth get in the way of a good story.
They don't let the truth get in the way of a good ad, that's for sure. But as long as that continues to work, they'll hold power. And as long as they hold power, they'll continue to make these same decisions. And so Oregon is getting the government they chose. Is it the government they want? We'll see.
We'll see.
So I know, because, one, what you described earlier when I said, why were you coming back? You gave that exact speech at the Crooked River Ranch Burgers and Politics speech this summer. I was invited there to speak, and you took the microphone next, and you said food insecurity.
Yeah, those are the issues I feel very urgent about.
Yep.
I'm glad you were
paying
taking
attention.
notes.
So if you were to run for U.S. Senate tomorrow, you would say, my number one priority is the national debt.
Well, I would do this. I would absolutely say to the voters, this same senator, Jeff Merkley, advocates banning the filibuster and then supporting the filibuster. He's all over the board. He's partisan. And he has no intent on dealing with the national debt. Zero. Yeah. Ron Wyden went to Congress and the debt was below $1 trillion. Now it's 36.7 trillion. That means under his time in Congress, we've racked up $35.7 trillion of debt.
What was the committee he chaired?
And he was on Senate Finance Committee, et cetera, right? So you say, well, hey, it was Republicans and Democrats and et cetera. That's on, okay.
Yeah.
But what about? Anytime you make a point, especially with our U.S. senators, anytime you make a point, people say, but what about? But I'm just like, stop with the but abouts. What about? Can you answer the question?
Right. What are you going to do?
Can I not criticize Ron Wyden? Is it against the law in this state to criticize Ron Wyden in the complete fiscal irresponsibility that this man has done to us?
Yeah.
I want people to have righteous indignation. I want people to be agitated. And I want him, instead of his orchestrated town halls,
Yeah.
to actually answer the question, for God's sake, what have you done to us? What have you done to our children and our grandchildren? But oh my God, right? Because every time they put out, Ron Wyden and Jeff Merkley put out these press releases, they delivered this amount, they delivered this amount. I tell you what, if I had your credit card, you would think I was the greatest guy on earth. I'd be gifts. You need a new car. We're going to do, this program. We're going to find someone to mow your lawn. We're going to do all this.
Until the bill comes due.
Then one day you'd realize, wait a second, that was my credit card.
Exactly.
But from the time that you are in the system to the time that you pay the bill, you have no idea what I'm doing to you. And that is Ron Wyden. That's Jeff Merkley. And that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so Jeff Merkley filibusters wrong. When you're, and then now he's all about the filibuster. I mean, I don't know how to take this guy seriously.
Right.
Does he have independent thought? It's just completely partisan, party line. I get it. You know what? And that's cool for Jeff Merkley. That's cool for Ron Wyden. I guess the question that I have is, if you want change, why are you sending the same guys back time and time again? If you want change, you got to vote for change. And these guys are never going to get you change because they will never stand up to the system that's produced it. So that's what I'd say to them. And I'd say it again and again and again. If they ever bothered to listen, but they don't, and their town halls that were orchestrated, they don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
No.
And you know what? So people would say, oh my God, if you were in Idaho, would you say that to a Republican senator? Yeah. I'd say it. I'd say I got 36.7 trillion reasons why this is unconscionable. And this issue is landing in our lap.
It is going to change the next 10 to 20 years. It is something that we will have to deal with.
I tell you what, and these guys continue the same old.
Yep.
And, but they'll tell you they stand against Trump. Wyden put out the other day on Facebook a post where it was, all the different protests. We're standing up against Trump and et cetera. Well, okay.
While Trump's finding government efficiencies.
All right. So apparently you're all for USAID and some of that spending. You're for that? Well, because he's never asked that question.
Right.
He's status quo.
Yeah.
He's always going to be status quo. So if you want the status quo and you could care less about your grandchildren, I'll say, because Democrats say that to us all the time, if you cared about children. Well, here's my question. How do your grandchildren have the ability to prosper, shouldering the debts that our grandparents helped raise up, if our generation doesn't make a change? This is on us.
So I'll selfishly make this argument too. If you don't have a higher power, if you don't have absolute morality and you're a secularist, at any given point, you can change what is morally better.
Yep.
And at any given point, you can make with moral outrage as you're driving force and righteous indignation, you get to blow with the wind. Because at any given point, I can say the filibuster was good, the filibuster was bad. I can justify anything I do because at any given point, I'm the one deciding what is morally good and what is morally bad.
I as you can tell, my view of these guys is, you know what? You've never told us.
They've never had to defend a single vote that they've cast.
No, and
Not
my
one time.
point is, do you get what the debt load is?
You've been to one of their town halls, huh?
I've been to some of their town halls. You don't think that? Well, they're not going to. It's
What's crazy though is the same people that show up to their town hall
they should,
as sycophants and tell them how wonderful they are, and it literally is a question of how great are you, Bruce Starr? When you come to the microphone, I'm questioner number 3. Tell me how great you are, and then you go to the same location a week later. Cliff Bentz is in town, and it's the same people saying, "How dare you, evil, bigot," whatever names they throw at him, and you need to go back and you need to tell Don. But it's the same people, and that's what baffles me is our party's inability to show up at some of these grassroots level events.
That's true.
And maybe it's because they've witnessed it so many times and they see it for the farce that it is. And, now Jeff Merkley will tell us how many hundreds of town halls he's done, right? Like it's a big thing to be able to announce to people. And for about a week there, I was getting emails every day. When are you doing your next town hall? Because we just lambasted Cliff Bentz and you're next. And when are you going to be in town? I'm coming to get you. And anyway.
Well, in my frustration, as you can tell, is not isolated to the U.S. senators from Oregon, but they're endemic of the problem, and they're not answering anything about it, and they're intensely partisan, and so this is not how we're going to solve this problem. And every time I've tried to ask that question, it's not answered, and my frustration continues to grow because this problem, and most people don't, when you look at the demographics, what our programs are, right? It's just growing.
Yeah.
And so this is a serious problem. And, but I will say, when I saw that they voted against Secretary Chavez-DeRemer, and I just said, okay, you just, what credibility do you possibly have at this point to deny that you're just dyed-in-the-wool partisan? So, I mean, we know how you're going to vote. You're going to push a button.
Yeah, you're just like a robot.
We've gone way over our 5 minutes, but I want to play the game with Bruce Starr. You're running for office, and you only get one top priority. Should we say U.S. Senate again, or do you want to?
Make it U.S. Senate. I want to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, let's.
Because he's probably going to say, I ain't going to be McLane's rant.
No, but I do think it's one of the things I've always found entertaining with politicians is the ability to say I have one top priority and it's these 27 things. Clearly, Mike cares about the national debt. I think that's a fair one to argue. Is there? I was talking to another member of the House the other day, and he was saying, "I'm a one-issue guy. It'd be forestry. Like I want to go back to D.C. and serve in Congress someday, and I just am a one-issue guy. I want to get forestry going back again in the state of Oregon." Is there one topic for you?
I would say probably not one topic, but I would say that you have to get the spending under control. And I look at like what Rand Paul has suggested, where you basically take every program and over a course of maybe a decade, you take 5 cents, 5 pennies out of every dollar and reduce each program by that amount. Who can't cut 5%? And when you do that over the course of multiple budgets, you're able to get control of spending. We have to get control of the federal spending. The thing that irritates me, and we've talked about this a little bit, is both of our United States senators have been in D.C. now a long time. Obviously, Wyden longer than Merkley, but neither one of them have had to defend a single vote that they've ever cast as U.S. senators. We just haven't had credible campaigns where they've been forced to, tell Oregonians why they continue to spend the way that they've spent. And I just look forward to this upcoming cycle. Maybe that changes.
Is the media playing a role in that? Are they giving them a free pass?
Well, they do, but I think you can't blame the media when, unfortunately, as the minority party doesn't nominate a candidate that can raise enough money that becomes credible, and they don't have to. I mean, they can ignore the Republican opponent, so there's not a debate that is televised. There's not, television ads where they're held to account for their record. That has been the reality for both of these guys for their entire time in the United States Senate.
So, Bruce, you've got a podcast. Plug your podcast.
Yeah, so we've had a series of conversations with, I think, really interesting individuals. And tomorrow I'm going to interview Ben Stang. He's the Polk County Fire Chief. He's also the president of the Special Districts Association of Oregon, so he kind of wears two hats. So we're going to have that conversation. We're going to record it tomorrow, and it'll be posted on our channel shortly after that.
What's the name of the podcast?
The name of the podcast, we are branding it The Starr Chamber.
The Starr Chamber.
I love that name.
Yeah.
Although it has some historic.
It's all about killing bad ideas.
Okay.
I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh.
That's
this
good.
This is exciting.
Wow. Bravo.
So I will say this.
Bravo.
I'm sure this is no secret to people, but Senator McLane and I bought the equipment. His son with his son's father-in-law, they built the stage, they built the desks, which is super fun that it stayed in the family, so to speak. And we put this together hoping to just share content, kind of try and remove the veil of what happens in Salem, give direct access to people as to what we're trying to accomplish this session, what we're up against. And so super thrilled that you've started a podcast and they're bringing people on and again, just connecting with people. I think it's awesome.
Super fun.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thank you for being here tonight. And away we go. Senate Republicans.
America.